drives Western Australia. The weather today is just amazing. It's meant to be the middle of winter. The sun is shining, it's warm, so I ain't complaining. But this episode, this is perhaps a controversial one, and I'm probably gonna cop a little bit of flack for this because it's what divides us four-wheel drivers into two real groups, and that is, what is better, manual or automatic transmission? Now, it's a beast of a topic to talk about. There we go. Now, before I even begin, I just want to say that in reality, what's better for you is purely down to personal preference. I mean, I drive a manual just because I always have. I just find it more natural to have that feeling of always being in control, particularly when I'm off-roading. But that said, one thing I hate about manuals is when I'm stuck in peak hour traffic and it's that typical stop-start kind of stuff where you're going from first, second, third gear back down to first and you're just forever on the clutch. It's obviously terrible. So for that, autos are way better. So automatics are ideal for those of you who are wanting convenience and something that's just easy to drive. However, when you're driving in intense off-road situations, they are more prone to overheating, and in some situations they are harder to get out of and easier to get bogged. So for the purpose of this video, what I'll do is I'll treat this as a bit like a point scoring competition. We'll run through all the different four-wheel driving scenarios, and whatever comes out best will score a point. So straight off the bat, manuals score a point for their ability to be able to handle off-road situations in regards to temperature control, and autos score a point because they're better at handling slow speed. Perhaps one of the major advantages of having a manual is fuel economy. They're cheaper to run, so they do provide you better bang for buck. And another really serious advantage is they are in certain situations easier to recover if you're bogged. But, and this is a big but, they have a clutch that if you don't drive it correctly or you're just driving in extreme conditions, it'll wear it down. So a manual has more wearable parts than an auto. That's not to say that automatics, they do have clutches, and yes, they can wear down. So manuals get a point for fuel economy, and autos get a point just for the simple fact that parts don't wear down so much like a clutch. Alright, so now we've warmed up a little bit, let's start comparing autos and manuals in the real world when it comes to off-roading, and we'll start with water crossings. If you've ever driven across a river or a seriously flooded bit of track, you'll know that feeling of anticipation, fear, dread of not knowing whether you're gonna make it across or not. And everyone's seen those videos on YouTube, which it makes for awesome entertainment as long as it's not you or someone that you know, right? So what's better, auto or manual transmission for water crossings? Well, if you've driven a manual before, hopefully you're aware that the secret is stick it in second gear low and just send it. And as long as you keep your foot on the accelerator and you don't stop, you make it across. The problem is if you decide to try and change gears halfway across or stop and you have to put it back into first gear or try and take off again, water can actually get stuck in your clutch, which may not pose a real issue immediately. But if water does get into your clutch, it can cause slippage and wear it down over time. When it comes to autos, the rule is generally exactly the same. Stick it in second gear low, drive it across. However, you do have the luxury of being able to stop, change gears, and not have to worry about water getting stuck in your gear system. So for this one, the choice is easy. A massive 1 point for automatics. Next up, what's better when it comes to hill climbs? Autos and manuals have both got their advantages and their disadvantages. The advantages of an auto on a hill climb is your ability to still drive forwards or backwards if you get stuck, and that's simply because you don't have to play around with a clutch. That initial split second of coming off a clutch sends inertia back down the hill, which can cause your wheels to spin. And I know I've been in situations where it's just frustrating that I'm not good enough on a clutch to be able to get out of a section that if I was in an automatic, it wouldn't actually really even be a problem. So a massive point to automatics. But, and this is, again, is another very big but, every automatic driver knows the annoyance of your car changing gear during a hill climb, and in turn you lose speed when speed is everything you need at that point. But that said, an automatic is still safer driving uphill. These are just my opinions, and I'm sure that you'll have your own opinions. However, manuals can still be safely driven up steep hill climbs. It's just a simple matter of really knowing your car and being in control of your clutch. So if you're using your clutch correctly and avoiding wheel spin and avoiding your car traveling backwards down the hill, you can still safely make it up a hill, and there's no real difference between automatics and manuals in that situation. That said though, one trick that I've used countless times to get myself out of stupid situations that I've found myself in, and I've been trying time and time again to fly up the hill, is just to simply put my diesel into low range second gear and just let the torque of the vehicle just pull myself up the hill. It has got me out of situations where I can't believe that just the torque of my vehicle has given me enough power. I've just been a mere spectator behind the wheel as my car just takes me up. Now obviously just putting it in second gear low and expecting your car to be able to pull you through a really scary situation is asking a bit much. So it does obviously depend on the situation, but it has got me through some pretty tricky situations before. So a bonus point has to go to manuals if you do have good clutch control, or you do have a car with plenty of torque. Now, in the wise words of Sir Isaac Newton, what goes up must come down. Now in this scenario, it's quite different. Automatics have a massive disadvantage in this scenario because they have the habit of changing gears on you, and you do have to sit on the brakes the entire way down. So this can obviously wear out your brakes. So an easy point for manuals in this situation, especially if you've got something like a diesel, because the engine braking on it is phenomenal, and that's a technique that I use all the time. It's a little bit of a cheat code really. I can go down extremely slippery, shaly descents. I just stick it in low first or second, and I just let the engine braking slowly guide me down, and so far, touch wood, it's not been an issue for me at all. and it's made me look quite skillful where zero skill on my behalf was required at all. Alright, next up we have sand and mud driving, and this I like to think is what most of you spend most of your time doing in between the corrugated dirt road tracks and the boring blacktop. So I do like to think of my four-wheel driving habits of being pretty stock standard. In the summer I like the beach, and in the winter I like the mud out in the bush. But if you're new to four-wheel driving, these situations can land you in some really tricky, expensive and even embarrassing situations. If you already watch a lot of footage on YouTube of four-wheel driving, you've no doubt seen clips of four-wheel drives rolling sideways down sand dunes or getting bogged on the beach and being swept away by the tide. So let's just cover off very quickly and briefly on a few four-wheel driving must-dos before you head out. The first thing to make sure that you do is to deflate your tyres, and if you're unsure of tyre pressures and that sort of thing, I'll link a video that I did before just up the top there. By deflating your tyres, essentially what you're doing is you're increasing your tyres' tread pattern on the ground, which helps you to avoid getting bogged. And the next handy tip when it comes to sand driving is momentum. You obviously want to keep momentum in soft sand, but it's often easier said than done because you do want to use low gears. But it is quite common to come out of a low gear and go into high four and be traveling at sort of 50 to 60 kilometers an hour along a beach that's clear and has a solid base. But what this can do is add added pressure on your transmission. So autos are going to win this one because they do give you smoother gear changes, so you're losing less momentum. But when it comes to recovering a vehicle in sand, manuals have the advantage because you can just keep them in the same gear the whole time throughout the recovery, which helps to clear out sand or even mud throughout the process. Autos, on the other hand, have the obvious disadvantage of having that habit of changing gears whilst you're going through the recovery. So manuals win only slightly in this scenario. Alright, so the final round. Which transmission performs better when it comes to rock crawling? This type of driving, in my opinion, is the most risky and the most technical. The best tip that I can offer is to take it slow. Wheel placement is critical in this sort of situation. Get out, walk the track, decide your line and stick to your plan. So as for what's safer, well, for beginner four-wheel drivers, an automatic is going to be a better option because you've only got to worry about your acceleration without having to worry about controlling the clutch. However, rock crawling in a manual, in my opinion, is some of the most fun that you can have four-wheel driving. Important things to remember is have a spotter, have somebody out there watching as you go up. You're going slow, so it's not like they're going to have to run. Give them a radio in their hand and they can talk you right through it. And as I said before, air down your tyres. It's amazing the difference that a few PSI can actually make. The number of times I've been having trouble in a certain section and I just air down just a little bit more and it gets me through, no dramas. So, damn, it's a draw, which is probably just as well for my sake, for argument's sake. But you tuned in to watch this video for an answer as to what's better between automatic and manual transmission. So I'll give you one. In my opinion, an automatic is a better choice of four-wheel drive. If you are new to four-wheel driving, if you want something that is easier, safer and more comfortable to drive, However, saying that, having a manual transmission is something that is more fun to drive, gives you more of a feeling of being in control. And if you're an experienced driver, or you just want a little bit more of a challenge, then they're the better option. So as I said at the very beginning of the video, it does just simply come down to personal preference. So that about wraps it up. Now, I may have missed some points, so if I have, please let me know in the comments section and let's get the the discussion started. What do you reckon's better, automatic or manual transmission? If you have enjoyed watching, please give this video a thumbs up and please consider subscribing if you haven't already. That really does help my channel out. Geez, I think I might just keep on four-wheel driving today. I'm Dan. This has been Epic Drives Western Australia. Catch ya.